and I'm so happy you're here. Thank you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for being involved in this community. Thanks for listening and tuning in. Episode 2, season 2, two twos. Twos are my favorite. They're definitely my angel number. Shows I'm on the right path. I'm working towards what I need to, and so are you. So know that this is your sign that you are exactly where you're meant to be, and hopefully this episode will bring you some benefit, that this will help you grow in some way to be able to increase the amount of self-awareness and just consciousness within you to be able to develop deeper and more profound connections with yourself and with in the relationships in your life, because today's topic is about vulnerability. We're talking about getting deep, getting real, being honest about who we are in this world, this bright and big world. And don't, yeah, so Cleopatra is here. Luna Cleopatra. Luna Cleopatra Crumbs is her name. Full name to be exact. My daughter and I made it up. She picked Luna from Sailor Moon. I picked Cleopatra, obviously. And then Crumbs, God knows where that one came from. She threw that in there and she thinks it's hilarious. And then I thought about her being like a 16-year-old, being like, it's Luna Cleopatra Crumbs. And they're like, Crumbs. She's like, I don't know. I was like 5 and that's what I wanted to name her. And that's exactly what happened and we're sticking to it. So, okay. Anyways, as I digress, as I do, but we're back. So today's topic is about vulnerability, and I'm actually going to split the pod into 3 different sections. So we're going to start with a meditation, and we're going to move into kind of the data portion of it, some research that I've found, some practices that I've utilized in order to cultivate more vulnerability within my life and intimacy and the benefits of it. And then we'll wrap up with some journaling questions for you to be able to take home with you and to really reflect on in your own personal life so that you're able to kind of apply whatever stood out for you and to really understand what this means for you and how it can help you grow. So I hope that you follow along throughout the entire conversation. There'll be definitely different little key parts of each one, all of which are really designed around helping you understand this concept, but not just understand it in like a cerebral kind of intellectual way, but really be able to integrate it into your life in a way that benefits you and hopefully be able to continue you on your own spiritual path. And that's ultimately the purpose of this podcast. I designed this podcast, the Meeting Your Soul podcast, around this idea of being able to collectively work towards our spiritual growth together. There's so much research out there, there's so many studies, there's so many books about spiritual development, but I'm grateful with, especially within the yoga world, to have a community around me that is continuing to cultivate that. But I think it's actually quite challenging to find a larger collective of people who are just talking about spirituality in general and spiritual growth and the challenges that we're facing, because we all are experiencing them and we're experiencing them in real time. Life is the greatest teacher. And so we're learning all of these things, but how do we continue on from a more conscious and more self-aware space so that we incorporate these lessons instead of crashing out, which God knows we all do sometimes too. So don't you worry. Have you guys seen that Kendrick Lamar, and it's like my healed self, and then it's like my unhealed self, my unhinged reaction. And he's like, hey, Drake. And then he like goes into like the dance from the Super Bowl. Anyways, it made me laugh. And it's so real because does my healed self know better? Does my healed self know that I probably shouldn't react this way? Does my healed self know that I probably should just take the high road and not react? Hell yes. My higher divine self knows a lot of things, but does my earthly, unhinged, slightly trauma infused, upset, angry, hurt self really give a fuck? No, it doesn't. So we all have our reactions. We all have these parts of us that can be triggered. Eckhart Tolle actually used to call them our pain body. And he used to describe it as like a thorn within your leg. And so, if someone was to brush up against your leg, it would be no big deal. It'd be like, whatever. But if there's a thorn that's been there for a long time, that's really dug in really deep, especially, is like borderline nerve damage. And then someone just brushes up against it slightly, it can be extremely painful. And so we all have these things in our lives that we've probably experienced, but didn't fully understand the scope of it thought it was healed, thought it was done until someone brushes up against it. And then we're rudely awakened to the fact that it's still very painful and still very much prevalent within our life. And so when we have these moments, how can we move through them? And I guess the reason why I bring this up is because I think for me, vulnerability is one of those pain points. I've been taken advantage of so many different times emotionally from people that I loved and trusted, that being vulnerable, being really seen, being allowed to let people in is really challenging for me because I assume and that they're going to take advantage of me. So I have a lot of defense mechanisms that I've placed around my heart, around connection, and being real and authentic in order to be discerning in how I approach them. And I would definitely say friendships has been one that I've healed through, thankfully. I have an incredible group of friends that have really been there for me, that have showed up for me. So I've been able to heal all those wounds, but there's still some of them there, very much so. I would say relationships, partnership is one of the biggest wounds that I have, especially after the divorce, to be able to open myself up to feel really safe and seen with someone, and to be able to hold space for them and to assume that they have my best interests in mind. That's also one that's been challenging for me. And so, but as we all know, vulnerability, honesty, letting yourself be seen is the only way to truly cultivate a relationship that has solid foundation and roots to it. Because if you don't have that, it will be shallow, it will be unsteady, and it will fall down. So, as we're in this Mercury retrograde, as we're in Venus retrograde, we're in eclipse season, all this shit is happening at the same time. All of it really comes around the fact of how are you connecting, how are you communicating in vulnerable and intimate situations from a place of love. And that's like ultimately what I pulled from all of this. I ended up going to the ladies' room up in Greenwood. If you're from Seattle, you might know what I'm talking about. It's this like a spa, like a pool, like one of those like you go to like hot tub and then you have like the cold plunge and the steam room and the sauna. Anyways, I had never been to it. Actually, I went years ago, but it was under new ownership and looked completely different. But I came back. One of my friends, Annie, was hosting a meditation, so then I ended up going to the pools afterwards. I hadn't had a day off in a while, so I was like, okay, this is needed. I'm just gonna take a break for myself. Anyways, so then I go and I pulled from the Oracle deck, and that was like in the little like lounge room, and one of the things was like approaching everything from a place of love. And that's ultimately what I want to actually lead our meditation with today, is cultivating a sense of love and connection within you, because no matter what's going on, the answer is always love. Sorry to say. If you can respond with fear of hurt, or you can respond from love. And you should always respond from love. And that doesn't mean, and that could be love for yourself, that could be setting a boundary, that could be love for someone else to be able to see them and their pain and their hurt, but also respecting yourself enough to be able to hold true to that. It could be love and just showing someone compassion and empathy. They're going through a hard time. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. But ultimately, and I know something that's so true for me, is that if I come from a space of compassion, I never regret it. And that could be compassion for myself. That could be holding true to what I believe in my value systems. There's no question about that. It's not being a pushover. But at the same time, I can be extremely, I was going to say violent. I can be extremely violent with my words. I can. And when I feel hurt or tainted in any way or attacked, I very much, don't give me no mind. I very much can defend myself when I need to. And that's because I was in really unhealthy relationships that constantly pushed my boundaries and constantly pushed me into the point to where I learned how to defend myself from a very aggressive stance, to be able to shield myself and protect myself. Is that how anybody should live or anyone should communicate? No, but it's what I've learned, because it kept me safe. And I think we all have these defense mechanisms that we've established over time that have allowed us to feel safe. It's allowed us to defend ourselves. If these are established in our childhood, in our youth, in our adulthood, really at any point in time in our life, we are our history. We are the people that we've loved. We are the relationships we've had. So there's an honesty to that, but at the same time, is it conducive to me being where I want to be and creating and cultivating the relationship that I ultimately want? No. And so that is one of the biggest lessons I've come to learn within these last few weeks, is really just being honest with myself about a lot of patterning that I've established within my relationships and communication styles. And this is that retrograde. That's why I thought it was so important to talk about, because I know that it's something that I am aware of, that I try to cultivate and create, but that doesn't mean that it comes automatically, and that there's not also that I'm having pitfalls in the pursuit of it. So like putting yourself in a position where you can get rejected, saying a joke that may or may not be received, asserting an opinion that may offend others, joining a table of people that you don't know, being able to tell someone that you're attracted to them. All of these are like elements of vulnerability. All of these are opportunities for us to be able to share who we really are. And again, we have the opportunity for rejection, which is one of the biggest deterrents of why a lot of people don't do a lot of things. So like recognizing that this is not easy stuff, but then the rewards of it is what I really feel like is the epitome of why it's worth it. Living a wholehearted life, you accept that you're worthy. When feeling vulnerable and exposed, you stop resisting. You stop worrying so much about what other people think of you. You embrace your imperfections. You share your feelings and with others that you trust. Like you're ultimately trying to overcome adversity time and time again, because let's be real, that you're going to do this a few times and it's going to crash and burn. Shit's not going to go right. It's not going to go good 100% of the time for no one. Like it literally, like it's impossible, because not everything's in alignment with what you think that you desire. Like so much of finding and creating the life that you desire and want and need, and like within your soul is being called to do, is trial and error. Like I wish, and like I'm a very in tune person. I trust my intuition 100%, truly. Sometimes I like won't like act on it, and that's few and far between, because I'm probably one of the more intuitively driven people that I know. And so sometimes I won't, I always regret it, but sometimes I don't, but most of the time I do. And even then, there's a lesson that was meant to be learned within a certain interaction. Not everything always goes to plan, and that's okay. And to be able to shake that shit off and to continue on is not easy. And it's resiliency, and it's building that resiliency around yourself, building that trust, building that self-confidence to know that even if you fall down, you can get back up, trusting yourself to be able to get back up, and knowing that you're not a failure for falling down in the first place. And that's where I struggle. That's where I have the hardest time, is because when I fall, I hate making mistakes. I try to be so calculated about everything that I do. I try to be really intentional about everything I do. And then also I try to trust my intuition and be very heart-led. So then I do all of these things to hopefully be able to move from a space of alignment in all aspects. But still then, I still run into some fucking pitfalls, and I still have my own shit that I'm still working through and healing through, that's coming up to the surface throughout all of this, where I'm crashing and burning sometimes, you guys. I am not always right, to say the least. I'm not always right. The Taurus moon in me is cringing, but it's true and it's real. And I'm okay with that, because I recognize that I am still a work in progress, and we all are. And the more that we're willing to accept that, and the more that we're able to lean into that, the easier life gets from that point on, because then we stop holding ourselves to such an incredibly high standard that we actually then just, again, we offer ourselves some grace. We fuck up every once in a while, and then we keep going, because that's life. And they're like, literally, you're gonna have to go through a snake pit once in a while. You're gonna have to go through a fucking crocodile pond, and shit, your foot might get bit. You might lose a toe. I don't know why I'm going through this metaphor, but we're gonna keep rolling with it. Like, you're gonna have to climb up a couple mountains, and maybe there's a rock slide, mudslide. I don't know. Okay, you guys, and this is all metaphorically. So like, that can appear in your life as like you entering into a relationship with someone who you like were really intentional about, and then shit goes to flames there, or you're triggered in some way, and then you don't handle something in the best way possible. Maybe you create a friendship or a new friend group. You enter a new friend group and you're putting yourself out there, and then like you realize it's not in alignment, and then you guys aren't friends anymore and you lose that friend group. All of these things are painful. All of these things are hard. These are hard lessons to learn. But were they necessary? Were they needed? Was there some element of this that was supposed to help you grow in a way? Hell yeah. And so that's what we always come back to. So thinking about this, like, key aspects of like being able to handle adversity when it comes up is keep a positive attitude. Like, truly take a step back, realize that life, there's always a silver lining in every situation. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel sad. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to feel hurt. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to feel any of the spectrum of emotions that are going within you. But then to know, like, to lean into gratitude, to know that there is something to be grateful for, to have something that you appreciate, that you value, that you welcome in, because then you realize that life is so much more than that, no matter what. Sorry, I wrote all my notes down here, so I'm just coming back to them. Learn from the experience. And that's ultimately what we want to go into today. And this will be some of our journaling prompts. Analyze what went wrong. Identify the areas of improvement to grow from the adversity. What did you learn from it? What did you take away from that? What can you carry with you going forward about it? Build a support network. Reach out to people, have people that you can talk to about these things. Take care of yourself, give yourself enough sleep, eat well, engage in stress-reducing activities, take responsibility for your role and how you showed up in that situation and how you can grow. Lean with that, and then open the door for other ways other people could have grown too. Because no one's going to take responsibility if you're not taking responsibility first. Like, one of the best conflict resolutions is to admit where you went wrong. Admit fault. Without being like, well, because of this, or, well, if you didn't do this, I wouldn't have done that. That's my hardest one. I admit I did that wrong, but if you didn't do this in the first place, I may have not reacted that way. Yeah, okay, that's probably not going to be received well. Okay, so take responsibility for and accountability for your role to play within it all. Again, there's two parts. There's two that are to tango. It takes two to tango, but still, what can you control is ultimately what I've been really focused on recently. So like, what can you control, and leaning into that. And what I can control is how I respond, how I react, and how I show up, and how I forgive. And that is the only way that you can move forward from a place of connection and vulnerability, because you're being vulnerable yourself. And then when you're being vulnerable, then you're allowing the other person the capacity and opportunity to also be vulnerable. And then that builds resiliency, that builds responsibility, and that ultimately leads to opportunities for new paths and for new opportunities for growth. And let's be real, keep it a little light, have a little fun, laugh at yourself, know that it's not that serious, it's not the end of the world. And more often than not, there's a whole new world that could be opening up to you if you allow it to. So I talk about all these things because I wanted to kind of lead with this, because vulnerability is not easy. It's not, as we already discussed, being able to do all of these things is not something that comes natural for many of us. But the value and the importance of why you should do this is to be able to embrace yourself, to live authentically, to have these genuine connections. But within that, know that there's going to be opportunities where you might fall down that you'll need to get back up. So cultivating resiliency, being able to lead, and how you handle those moments that don't work out so hot is also just as equally as important. So just tying this all in together, and offer up a story for you guys. So I'm really leaning into this in particular for my own I would say within friendships, I've done pretty good. I'm really okay and comfortable putting myself out there in friend groups. Like, I can go I can go up to a girlfriend and be like, or like a friend that I know maybe as an acquaintance that I've seen around, but I've always thought was really cool. Like we've all had a girl crush, right? And so like I've had girl crushes on certain people, and I'm like, ooh, I just like love them. They seem really cool. Like I would love to get to know them. If I feel that way towards someone, I ultimately will just go up to them. I'm like pretty like outgoing in that way. Like I'll be like, hey, like we should hang out or we should go do something or you want to go for a walk or do you want to grab coffee? We should connect. Like I have no problem putting myself out there in that way and I really don't feel any certain way about it. Like I'm just kind of like whatever and if they receive that, they receive that. If they don't, they don't. Also, that's because I'm very comfortable and confident with who I am as a person and especially who I am as a friend. So like I know I provide value as a friend. I know I show up, I'm hella fun, I'm cool, like I'm chill, like I can go and I'm gonna provide value to that friendship and what I'm cultivating with that person. And if I ultimately am really like drawn to them, there's a reason why. So I try to lean into that and trust that. I don't always know why I'm reaching out to certain people. And for my friends that this has happened to, you guys know it's real. I'm like, and I've done this to quite a few people. I'm like, hey, like we should hang out, and then like we'll start hanging out, and like it's not like we're BFFs right away by any means, but it is nice because I like to meet people. I learn from a lot of people. If I admire you and I respect you, and I feel like you are also providing value within my life, like, and I see a friendship there. I'll just continue to cultivate that friendship and no ulterior motives. Like truly, I just think that women and friendship is so vastly underestimated, the importance of it within our lives. I have incredible friends I've known since I was in childhood, but also as I've grown, as my interests have changed, I've also really appreciated learning from different people that see me in a different light, and also I'm able to have a different type of conversation with. And I have my best girlfriends that I've known since I was young that are definitely people that see me fully and clearly. But then I have other friends who see me in a different way and are also able to help support me in a different way too, but all are very vulnerable. And I think for people that are seeking new relationships or friendships, to really be able to put yourself out there is scary. And I want to acknowledge that. We've already, extensively acknowledged that within the conversation so far. But know that, like, if you're feeling drawn to someone or you think someone's really cool, like, first analyze your motives. Like, what is it about them that you feel drawn to? And why do you think you would, how do you equally benefit one another? Why would a friendship, because friendships are a lot of work too. So like, why would you want to be friends with them? How are you, what's the motive behind it? How are you providing value? What do you really want from them? Because like typically there is a little bit of something behind our minds of why we want that. So be real about it, be honest, and then go from that. And I think if it's to mutually benefit one another, to be able to add value within both lives, then why not? Like I think then just shoot for it. And it doesn't have to be instant if you reach out to them and they don't necessarily respond immediately. Most people don't. So like that's cool. We all have our lives. We all have our normal protocol that we're kind of like following. So sometimes it's hard to get out of that. So and try not to take things personally. Follow the four agreements through and through, always. Like that's like truly what I always try to keep in the back of my mind. Don't take things personally. Always do your best. Speak with integrity, and don't make assumptions. So like being aware of those four aspects will really help you as you're trying to navigate through these new types of communications with people, because it's easy to let our ego get involved. It's easy to let our minds drift off and to be worried or to make up stories. But more often than not, they are rooted in fear. So just be real and be honest about that, and then take a step back to be able to reevaluate what's the truth of it and what's not so true. And Brene Brown also talks about your shitty first draft. I've talked about this quite a few different times. But if you are running into a conflict or something is coming up with you, reflect on it, take it in, write out kind of all the things that are frustrating you, that are hurting you, that are coming up for you, and then to be able to really scratch out the things, the stories we're making, to pick out those nuggets of truth and be able to then bring those into your heart space and then to heal from them, to grow from them. So just be aware of all of those things, follow the four agreements. And so I was thinking about friendship in particular. and that's a very vulnerable state for us to be in too. So don't ever underestimate that. And then also, like, if it doesn't work out, or if it's not a right fit, that's okay too. And, maybe there's a reason why. And again, divine alignment. Trust in that, lean into that, hear that. And when it's no longer right, it's no longer right. Or if a friendship is falling apart or doesn't have a sturdy foundation that it was built upon in the first place, to be able to let it go, because it might be able to create space for something more too. And I think that's such a big part of all of this, is like, so often we keep holding on to what's familiar, what we're comfortable with, that we don't actually give the amount of attention to the new opportunities, the new experiences that are coming into our life, or we're not receptive to them, or we don't realize that they're approaching us, or they're even knocking at our fucking front door, because we're too busy thinking about something that's happened in the past or what we thought it should have been. So that's one of the things I struggle with the most, is I tend to get very obsessive. I tend to get very driven and focused on what I want, that sometimes I'm not realizing that God's like, woohoo, like, over here, like, yeah, that was good for a little bit, but like, we're actually trying to just like, we were inching you over this way. My bad. Sometimes I just don't realize it. And so, but that's across the board. So like, recognize when things are coming up, notice where you're getting stuck, notice where you might be feeling a little distracted, or even just like caught in your own way. How are you blocking your own blessings? Okay. In all of these opportunities for a vulnerability. And I feel like cultivating vulnerability first and foremost will open the door for more opportunities, more vulnerability, more conscious relationships and conversations, because the more you know who you are, the more you're going to attract people that are in alignment with that. If you don't know who you are, then there's a high likelihood that no one else is going to know who that is either. And the people that are meant to see you are not going to be able to see you, because you're hiding you're concealing your true self. And I think one of the biggest shifts in my life happened a few years ago, where I really recognized how much I was just living a life in alignment with what I thought I needed to do based off the people around me and my partnership, that I was so out of touch with who I really was. And so the moment that I was removed from that situation and that environment, I had to reevaluate who I was and how I was showing up. What music did I like to listen to? What things did I like to do? What activities did I like to do? Who was I, And like, what was most important? I was also a new mom, and like, becoming a mom is like a whole nother thing, because you're like literally reevaluating how you literally operate every day to day life, because you're constantly taking care of a little one that's dependent upon you, along with yourself and maybe sometimes your partner, let's be real. So you're doing all of that. That's exhausting in its own right. So then you have zero time or energy left for yourself. But how do we really give from an empty cup? And it's been said a million fucking times, but it's real. You can't give from an empty cup. So you have to refill your cup in different ways in order for you to be able to show up for the people in your life. So if that alone is the reason why you take a lean into this, then that is alone why you try to take a moment of reflection to see how you're filling up your cup. And that's also how we overcome adversity. When things don't go right, how are you then taking a step back, resting, filling up your cup again, being able to lick your wounds, if you will, to be able to show up and then turn around and come back into it. So I was thinking of an example in particular within friendships, but in all honesty, vulnerability, like I mentioned earlier, is one of the biggest struggles for me, because I love to hold space for other people. I'm like very comfortable in my own skin. Like, I know I own my power in a lot of areas of my life, except for romantic relationships. And I don't know, they say that the major trauma comes from not your mother, but your mom's mom. So the maternal side. And so whatever deep wounds came from there is what you're carrying into this life. And I know for my mom's mom, there was quite a bit going on. And every astrologer, every intuitive, all of these people and above have always told me, like, being able to set boundaries for myself has always been something that's challenging for me, to be able to not push people away, to be vulnerable with discernment. And that is such a very acute space that we have to be into to be able to do that effectively and consciously. And for me, it's just very challenging to set a boundary to be able to uphold that, especially with the people I love, and care about. So like it's like you get all of it or you get none of it is kind of how I roll. It's such the Cancer. It's like you get my soft little gooey insides and like I'm just like a total love bug, or I'm a complete hard shell and it's like you really only get the surface of this and that's all I got for you today. Um, but most people that know me, they're like, you're extremely warm. I'm very welcoming. I'm very personable. I'm very chatty. I'm talkative. I can talk to anyone truly and like connect with anyone. And it's because I open up the door for a vulnerability in those moments, but like a cute little bits and only what I feel comfortable with. And so when I've, re-entered, dating world and partnership and this idea of partnership, being truly vulnerable with a romantic partner is absolutely fucking terrifying to me because it literally opens the door for me to be damaged, to be hurt, to be able to be taken advantage of, to be able to be seen and rejected. Like all of that comes up to the surface. And I thought I had healed so much over the last couple of years, that I had been so sturdy in who I was that I felt like nothing could like throw me off. And that shit threw me off. I'm not gonna lie. I've been in we won't go into detail about what we've been in, but to say that I have put myself out there is true. Did I crash and burn in the pursuit of that? Not necessarily, but at the same time, were there lessons to be learned? Hell motherfucking yes. And the biggest one for me is how I show up when I feel uncomfortable, when I feel out of control, and what's the reaction that I actually then end up creating because of that. And those are some unhealthy patterns that I had to see firsthand that I would have never known unless I was in that situation. How do I grow unless I know? I can't. And so for me, this last year has really been about bringing those to the surface and learning from them and hopefully like being able to evolve from them. Have I have I gotten some of these come out and just did the exact same shit over and over? Yes. Yes. You can ask some people about that. My bad, okay? I'm trying. I'm trying my best. We're all trying our best. Offer yourself grace. Offer yourself grace. I'm offering myself grace. But that doesn't mean complacency. Always remember that. Grace, understanding, compassion doesn't mean that you just don't try. Doesn't mean that you keep doing the same old shit over and over and expect different results. That's insanity. So the way to be able to do this, again, how do we handle adversity? We take moments to reflect, we come back into it, we lean into what is the mistake, what occurred, what is the lesson that we need to learn from it, and then how can we incorporate it going forward? The universe will continue to test you. The universe will continue to put different opportunities for you to do the same old shit, and you have to choose differently. And the only way to be able to manifest what you really want in your life and what you deserve is if you learn the lessons you're meant to in order to actually receive it when it's ready for you. You can't receive something that you're not prepared for. The universe, God knows that. So they're trying to prepare you. The universe, your angels, all of this is trying to protect you, to help you be successful. The pain, the suffering, all of the mistakes, those are all a part of the process. It's all a part of the journey, honey pie. It's all a part of the journey. So lean into that, trust that, be able to recognize that so that instead of getting defeated and deflated, you become empowered and stronger. And that's a fine line to walk as well. So know that it's not perfect, that we're all going to run into stumbling blocks. To say I've ran into a few fucking stumbling blocks would be an understatement. I realized that I have some very toxic patterning within relationships. And I won't go into detail about all of them, but to recognize that, to see that, I always thought it was the other person. This is just such a shitty thing for me to say but it's so real. It's so easy to blame. It's so easy to point the finger. It's so easy to say it's their fault. It's not. It is. It is. But it's not. You have a part to play in that. You're one piece of the pie, like of the collective. Like you're not, the ingredients did not make themselves. Like they all cultivated, they all created, they all fused together to create the situation that you're in. So whatever's going on in your little situationship, whatever's going on in your little like conversation, your partnership, whatever's going on, you helped create it. That's a hard truth. That's a big pill to swallow, but it's real and it's true. And I had to accept that. I had to see that. And I had to recognize what I needed to learn from that in order to not recreate that. And that's the key aspect of this. That's the key piece that I want you to take away from this podcast. If you take nothing else away, take away this. You have a part to play in every relationship that you're in. The dynamics that are present within your life are partially there because of you, and either something you need to learn or something you need to grow within yourself, or it's something you need to help someone else with, or and quite honestly, maybe it's just something you deserve in the most loving, kind way possible. You have someone that cares about you, that shows up for you because you deserve to. You have someone that has seen you and your good and your bad and held space for you because you deserve that. You deserve love. We all deserve to be loved. So, but we have to love, we have to be vulnerable, we have to connect, we have to share a piece with ourselves, and we have to be honest with that in order to be able to create that type of dynamic within a relationship too. So if we're not being vulnerable, if we're not being honest, if we're not being who we are, how can we expect that from our partners? So that's why I wanted to create this podcast, because you need to recognize what you need to do in order to be vulnerable, in order to be seen, in order to be you, yourself, the truest version of it. And that doesn't mean you're always going to have good days. Ella May has that one song and she's like, I'm a bitch when I first wake up, or I might look like a bitch when I first wake up, or don't talk to me then, or some things. I'm not necessarily a morning person. So like, we all have our moments. No one's perfect, but it's about finding someone and our people that do see us and love us for who we are. And I'm so grateful. I have so many people like that within my life. That's not to say that it's perfect within our friendship or within our partnerships or any of the things. But the people I roll with, that rock with, they know me and I know them. And I know that for sure. So you are meant to find your people, but you can only find your people once you know yourself. Meeting Your Soul podcast, the whole fucking reason why I created it. You have to know yourself. Self-study is essential. Continue to study yourself. Okay, party people. Let's go ahead and wrap up with a few journaling exercises to be able to reflect on all of this. We dove into a lot, and I brought in some studies from Brené Brown, really studies around vulnerability, and I really want you to just know that being vulnerable is not a weakness. It's one of the greatest strengths. Connection from authenticity. You let go of who you should be, and you are who you are. You accept uncertainty and recognizing that it's okay to not know exactly what's going to happen. We pretend like what we do doesn't affect people, and it does. Like how you show up, how you are then responding to your world around you does make a difference and does influence the relationships that you have and the way people feel around you. There's no way around it. What makes you vulnerable makes you beautiful, though. To love with no guarantees, to invest in relationships that may or may not work out is one of the greatest risks that we have, but can have the most profound rewards. To love, to control and project, the opposite is the opposite of vulnerability, but that's also the birthplace of connection and creativity. When we numb vulnerability, we also numb the ability to really connect with others. We numb the emotions, the joy, the elation that we can also feel. We have to feel it all. And that's one thing I tend to numb. I can numb very easily, not even with like substances or anything like that. Like I can literally repress my emotions if I need to. It's a defense mechanism because I feel so much. I'm a Cancer through and through, and I feel such a spectrum. Like I'm all on my feels all the fucking time. And so for me, like sometimes I need to fucking do some shit. I can't feel, okay? So I will turn it off. But that's very unhealthy for me, and that's very not okay. And I am also severely less effective in everything else I do. So I have to always be walking that line. I'm always riding that wave. I'm rocking that surfboard. I'm just streaming through. But I'm aware and then more present because of it. And also I'm not letting things stick where they don't need to be stuck too. So thinking about some different journaling exercises in order to be able to see how this comes up for you and how you can cultivate in order to increase the amount of connection, creativity, and ultimately more beauty within your life, especially during this retrograde season. So, 3 different questions that I would suggest to journal about in particular for yourself. Where do you hide the most? Ooh, is that friendship? Is that partnership? Is that within your career and work life? Where are you concealing yourself out of fear? Okay. Yeah, I'll let you sit with that one. No need to have the answer right away. Just saying to sit with it, be with it, write about it, be honest with yourself about that. And then once you're honest with yourself about that, what are 2 ways I can cultivate vulnerability in these situations? I offered a whole slew of them as we talked about it. But do we need to accept that we're worthy? Do we need to stop worrying so much about what other people think? Do we need to be more honest about our feelings, our desires, and what we need and want? Are we communicating that? Are we being real about that? And if we're not, why not? Okay. So what are 2 ways that we can cultivate vulnerability? What's preventing us from doing that? What are our fears around that? So these are just sub questions to maybe delve deeper into. But how can then we be honest about those fears in order to move closer towards what we ultimately do desire, which is that connection, what is the growth that can then be transmuted from the realness and honesty around those areas. Okay. Last journal question, and the biggest one for you, is how can I show up for myself in invulnerability? So we're looking outside of ourselves, but I want you to then also turn that mirror back in. How am I hiding from vulnerability within myself? Where am I not being honest about what's going on within my own personal life? Where am I hiding from myself? Where am I ignoring? Where am I distracting? Where am I avoiding? How can I remove those barriers? And that's probably the biggest one of all. You must be honest and real with yourself before you can really even create this within any other area. I started with the other 2 because it's easier to focus on other things than ourselves first. So you can start with those, but it all comes back to you. It always comes back to you. Okay? And the more that we're able to sit with that, to get comfortable within that, that's where the real magic happens, truly. And I know that to be true. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you for joining in for the Meeting Your Soul podcast. As always, I love you so much. I love you so much. I'm so grateful that you're here. Have a wonderful day. If you want to connect with me outside of this, you can follow me on Instagram at Ferrashino, FERRAHSHINO. You can also go to my website, ferrashino.com. All of it's the same. It's my name, Ferrashino. And if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the comment section. Like, subscribe, stay in touch with me. I am releasing these every other week. I'm going to hopefully get some more guests that are coming in. I've talked to a few different people, so we're scheduling some things that are hopefully going to be able to be a wealth of knowledge that I'm just really stoked about sharing with all of you. I have an incredible community around me of thought leaders, of people who are really making progressive change within their own life and within the world around them. And I really want to highlight everything that they're doing. And I hope and know that you will all enjoy that as well. So, mwah, 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 mwah.